God of love and justice, open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts to hear the message you proclaim to us this day. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Have you ever wondered how you would feel if you were Peter, James, and John as they stood there on the high mountain witnessing their Lord being transformed right before their eyes, being transformed to stand amidst two of Israel's greatest leaders, Moses and Elijah, and him standing there in all of his glory? Have you ever thought how they felt as they were engulfed in a cloud, overcome with terror, as they heard the voice of God proclaiming, "This is my Son, my chosen, listen to him"? And have you ever thought how you would feel if you had witnessed such an extraordinary event and then, poof, it is gone? Jesus is alone. The cloud vanishes, Moses and Elijah have disappeared, and the voice of God has gone silent. Is it any wonder that Peter wanted to stay in that place forever when he says, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah"? Of course, what he left unsaid probably was, "and one for us, the disciples." I can't blame Peter, because going back down the mountain meant he would return to a hard life, oppressed by Rome, exploited by religious leaders, and following his rabbi, who is no doubt incurring the animus of both. I've often stepped into the biblical shoes of Peter, James, and John, and what I imagine I would feel after the terror passed would be tremendous joy. Tremendous joy. I think I'm safe to say that joy is in short supply these days. It's very hard to feel joy in the absence of hope. And often these days I feel rather hopeless. I feel even more hopeless as President Trump and Vice President Vance shamefully berated President Zelensky of Ukraine in front of the world in the Oval Office. I don't need to go into the details because most of you watched it in real time or on the news. But I just kept thinking how cruel it was to gang up on one of our chief allies who has been at war for 3 years with Putin and Russia, a leader who is defending democracy, which we're supposed to hold so precious, and has witnessed firsthand 42,000 civilians killed and other atrocities such as rape, the resulting poverty, and the total devastation of cities, homes, and hospitals. Shameful. And to add insult to injury, he then kicks Zelensky and his delegation out of the White House with no lunch, no press conference, no nothing. Well, how's that for diplomatic hospitality? The only winner of Trump and Vance's despicable behavior is Vladimir Putin. In the aftermath, the Russians are celebrating and dancing in the streets because us, the leader of the free world, is siding with them, the aggressors, and not those who are attacked without provocation. Which, by the way, is totally against NATO and the UN, specifically Article 5. So let me refresh us to what Article 5 says. In 1949, the primary aim of the North Atlantic Treaty, NATO's founding treaty, was to create a pact of mutual assistance to counter the risk that the Soviet Union would seek to extend its control of Eastern Europe into other parts of the continent. Every participating country, including the US, agreed that this form of solidarity was at the heart of the treaty, effectively making Article 5 a collective defense a key component of the alliance. Article 5 provides that if a NATO ally is the victim of an armed attack, each and every other member of the alliance will consider this act of violence as an armed attack against all members and will take the actions it deems necessary to assist the ally attacked. So this kind of came to me Friday. No wonder Vance said he doesn't care about what happens to Ukraine, and why Trump says Ukraine will never be a part of NATO. The bottom line is they don't want the U.S. to have to abide by this article if it means Trump and Vance have to go against Putin. And they could always say, well, Ukraine isn't part of NATO, so we don't have to protect them. I was gladdened to see that the majority of world leaders are standing with Ukraine, which means they're not standing with us. I've heard many saying we need a new world leader, one who will stand strong with all our European allies. So my lack of hope stems from the fear we are now isolated from our allies and most of Europe and the world. We are alone. We are more unsafe and vulnerable to domestic and foreign terrorists than we've ever been since 9/11. And yes, World War III is not an impossibility because our own president has introduced it. Now you may be saying, what does this have to do with my faith? I came here for spiritual nourishment, not a lesson on politics. Well, our faith calls us and challenges us to do what is good and right. And in order to do so, we must engage in politics. We can't stick our head in the sand as Christians, and we can't stay up on some mountain of denial, making excuses again and again for our elected officials. Politics means examining the complex and difficult problems the world faces today and finding different ways of defining, understanding, and responding to these problems. So here is the spiritual response to what is happening in our nation and world. More than ever, we need to listen to God as this cloud and shroud of darkness envelops us. We need to listen to God, who says, Jesus is my beloved, the chosen, and we should listen to him. Listen to him who says, blessed are the peacemakers. Listen to him who says, love one another as I have loved you. Listen to him who says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Listen to him who says, I have been sent to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, and liberate the oppressed. Ukrainians are certainly among these in our own day. So we can only pray that our country, without ceasing, will listen to Jesus and be transformed into a nation of light again, a nation of peace, a nation who cares for the most vulnerable. I'm going to return to joy a little bit. Joy that really can't be fully experienced unless we have hope. The joy Jesus desires for us when he says in John's Gospel, these things I have spoken to you that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. I want to close with a poem a friend of mine read to me last week. It gives us some semblance of hope and actually gives us something we can do within our inner selves in these uncertain times. The poem is called Joy as an Act of Defiance. Joy as an act of defiance. And this is what the poem says. In a world torn at the seams, where voices clash like thunder and hearts harden under banners of fear, greed, and division, joy becomes a quiet revolution. It is not naive, this joy, that blooms in the cracks of broken systems and fractured trust. It knows the weight of the world, feels the sharp edges of cruelty, and still it rises. Joy is the hand extended across the widening divide, the eyes that meet, seeing not enemy, but another soul searching for the same fragile light. In the midst of shouting matches and walls built higher, we choose to gather, not to erase the pain, but to hold it together, to weave a new fabric from threads of compassion, stitching community where isolation once ruled. We stand in the rubble not to mourn what's lost, but to build what can be, a conscious community where each heartbeat echoes the next, and no voice is drowned by the noise of fear. We are not separate. The same sky stretches above us. The same earth cradles our feet. Your breath feeds the air I breathe, and my hope stirs the embers in you. Joy is not a retreat. It is resistance. A fire lit in the cold, a song sung through the static, a garden planted in barren soil. In this torn world, to find joy, to share it, to create it, it is to declare we are still here, we are still connected, and love is louder than hate. This poem was written by Jane Gumpel to encourage us to be a community of healers during these fearful times. So last week, I told Donald Trump and his minions, you will not erase us. Today, I say, Donald Trump, you will not take away our joy.
That's right.
Not now, not ever. You will not take away our joy. Amen.
Amen.